The Bell family arrived in Adams, Tennessee in the early 1800s, eager to start a new life. John Bell, a respected farmer, had purchased a vast stretch of land, rich with fertile soil, rolling hills and thick forests. His wife, Lucy, and their children felt hopeful about their future. The house they built was simple but strong, standing alone on the isolated property. For the first few years, everything seemed peaceful. The farm flourished, and the Bell children, especially young Betsy Bell, the family's only daughter, enjoyed exploring the deep woods that surrounded their home. But soon, the land's quiet beauty began to feel wrong. It started subtly. At first, John Bell noticed strange movements in the corner of his eye, shadows shifting between the trees when no one was there. The livestock grew restless, often found wandering outside their pens, as if something had spooked them. Then came the knocking. Late at night, when the house was silent, loud, deliberate knocks would echo through the wooden walls. John, thinking it was a prankster or wild animal, grabbed his rifle and stepped outside. The cold night air bit at his skin, and the moon cast long, eerie shadows across the farm. There was nothing. But just as he turned to go inside, a whisper drifted through the air. A woman's voice, low and unintelligible, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. John froze. The sound of footsteps crunching in the dirt came from behind him. He spun around. No one was there. The whispering grew louder, wrapping around him like a ghostly breath against his ear. He rushed back inside, slamming the door shut behind him. That night, as the family lay in bed, the knocking returned. Louder, faster, angrier. And for the first time, the Bell family felt it. The presence of something unseen, something that was just beginning to make itself known. The Bell family tried to ignore the strange occurrences, convincing themselves it was nothing. But the disturbances grew worse. One night, as the family settled in for bed, the quiet air of the house was suddenly broken by scratching sounds, like long fingernails dragging across the wooden walls. The noise moved, first near the fireplace, then along the ceiling, creeping closer to each bedroom. Betsy Bell, the youngest daughter, pulled her blanket tightly around her. She could hear whispers just outside her room, low, hushed voices, speaking words she couldn't understand. Then, without warning, her blanket was yanked off her bed. She gasped, sitting up, heart pounding. In the darkness, something cold and unseen wrapped around her wrist, a grip that felt like a skeletal hand. She screamed, thrashing against the invisible force. Her brothers rushed into the room and lit a lantern, their eyes wide with terror. The moment the light filled the space, the grip on Betsy's wrist vanished. John Bell and his wife, Lucy, arrived seconds later, demanding to know what had happened. Betsy sobbed, rubbing her wrist where red fingerprints had already begun to form, marks from something that wasn't there. That night, no one slept. The whispers continued, growing bolder. Sometimes they mimicked the voices of the Bell family. Other times, they cursed in a guttural, angry tone. Doors slammed on their own. Heavy footsteps stomped across the attic when no one was up there. The family knew now this was not a prank. Something had entered their home. Something wanted them to suffer. The Bell family was no longer safe in their own home. Whatever had invaded their lives was growing stronger, bolder, and crueler. The violent attacks on Betsy Bell became more frequent. Some nights she would wake up gasping for air, feeling an invisible force pressing down on her chest, as if a pair of unseen hands were choking her. Other times she would be ripped from her bed by her hair, flung across the room as if she weighed nothing. Her terrified screams would wake the entire family, but no one could stop what was happening. The whispers in the walls grew louder, more distinct. The family could now make out words. At first, they were just taunts, low, raspy voices calling out Betsy's name, laughing whenever she cried. Then the voice changed. It became clearer, stronger, almost human. "I am here. I will never leave. You will suffer." John Bell tried to keep the attacks a secret from the town, fearing that people would think he was mad. But word of the haunting spread quickly. Neighbors who visited the house witnessed furniture moving on its own, objects flying across the room, and the disembodied voice mocking them. People stopped coming. The Bell family was isolated, trapped inside a house ruled by an unseen tormentor. One night, as John Bell sat alone by the fireplace, he heard a noise behind him, a raspy, inhuman breath. Slowly he turned, and for the first time he saw it. Standing in the darkness was a shadowy figure, tall, twisted, its face a shifting void of darkness. Its eyes, if they were eyes at all, gleamed like burning coals. Then, in a voice thick with hatred, it whispered, "You are mine." By now, the Bell family had accepted that they were dealing with something far more sinister than just a haunted house. The entity was not just a ghost, it was something intelligent, something evil. And now, it was ready to speak. At first, the voice was a low whisper, muttering words that made no sense. But over time, the entity's voice became clearer, and it began having full conversations with the family. When asked who or what it was, the spirit gave different answers every time. "I am the spirit of someone wronged. I am a demon. I am from everywhere and nowhere." But one name kept coming up. The voice claimed to be Kate Batts, a local woman who had long been suspected of practicing witchcraft. People in town believed she had cursed John Bell years ago after a land dispute. Whether the spirit was really Kate or something pretending to be her, no one knew. But one thing was clear, the spirit hated John Bell. Whenever John entered a room, the voice would curse him in a hateful, guttural tone. It called him a thief, a liar, a fraud. And it swore, "I will kill you," became relentless. He began experiencing mysterious choking fits where an invisible force would seize his throat, leaving him gasping for air. Sometimes he would wake up to find his face swollen and bruised, as if he had been beaten in his sleep. The haunting grew stronger, more violent. One night, the family invited a local minister to stay with them, hoping his prayers could drive the entity away. The moment the minister began reading from the Bible, the spirit laughed, a deep, distorted, inhuman laugh. Then, the doors burst open on their own. A strong gust of wind howled through the house, though outside, the night was still. The minister felt something ice-cold slap him across the face, so hard that it knocked him to the floor. The voice boomed through the house, filled with rage and amusement. "You cannot stop me." The minister fled the house that night, refusing to ever return. The Bell family was running out of options, but the spirit had already made up its mind. John Bell was going to die. The Bell Witch had made its intentions clear. John Bell was its target. His health began to deteriorate rapidly. He suffered from mysterious seizures, his body growing weaker by the day. Sometimes his tongue would swell, leaving him unable to speak. Other times he would be found unconscious, as if something had drained the life from him. The entity never left him alone. It would whisper taunts in his ear while he lay in bed, laughing at his suffering. "Soon, you will be mine." One morning in December 1820, John Bell was found motionless in his bed, his breathing weak, his body unresponsive. Panic spread through the household. His son, John Bell Jr., rushed to find his father's medicine. But when he opened the medicine cabinet, he discovered something terrifying. The bottle of John's medicine had been replaced. Inside was a strange, dark liquid that no one recognized. The smell was pungent, foul, unnatural. Desperate, the family tried to give John some clean medicine, but it was too late. Within hours, John Bell was dead. The family, filled with grief and fear, turned to confront the invisible force that had tormented them for years. "Did you do this?" John Bell Jr. shouted into the empty room. A chilling silence filled the house. Then, the voice of the Bell Witch echoed through the walls, laughing in pure, triumphant hatred. "I did it. He will never wake again." During John Bell's funeral, something horrifying happened. As the family and neighbors gathered to say their final goodbyes, the Bell Witch began singing. A loud, mocking song filled the air, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The laughter of the entity echoed through the trees, through the graves, through the mourners' trembling souls. The Bell Witch had won, but it wasn't finished yet. After John Bell's funeral, the entity's presence did not disappear, but something had changed. The torment against the Bell family lessened, as if the spirit had achieved its goal. But Betsy Bell, John's daughter, remained its second favorite target. Every time Betsy became close to her fiancé, Joshua Gardner, the spirit would intervene, whispering in her ear, You must not marry him. At night, she felt hands gripping her neck, unseen lips breathing warnings against her skin. Objects would fly across the room whenever she spoke of her wedding. Terrified and exhausted, Betsy finally broke off the engagement. And then, something even stranger happened. The Bell Witch declared it was leaving. Before vanishing, the entity spoke to the family one last time, promising to return in 7 years. And in 1828, 7 years later, it did. For weeks, the Bell Witch tormented John Bell Jr., whispering dark prophecies about the future. It spoke of wars, disasters, and death, predicting events no one could believe, until years later, when they started coming true. Then, just as suddenly as it had arrived, the spirit vanished again. But it left a final warning. I will return in 107 years. And while no documented records exist of the Bell Witch haunting in 1935, many believe it never truly left. To this day, the land where the Bell Farm once stood is considered one of the most haunted places in America. Visitors report disembodied voices, shadows that move on their own, and a chilling presence watching from the trees. And deep in the woods of Adams, Tennessee, lies a cave, a place where many believe the Bell Witch still lingers. Some say, if you stand at the cave entrance and call out to the witch, you might hear it whisper back. Others claim that if you stay too long, you'll hear footsteps behind you, even when no one else is there. The legend lives on. The Bell Witch haunting remains one of the most terrifying and well-documented paranormal cases in history. Some believe it was a powerful poltergeist, others say it was a demonic entity, and some claim it was the curse of a wronged woman who never found peace. But one thing is certain. The Bell family's nightmare was real, and maybe, just maybe, the Bell Witch is still waiting. The end, or is it?